Pickle? Is it? I know we're not in the same room, but it kind of feels like it's getting hot
Is
in
it
here.
hot in there too?
It's hot in here. I think maybe because it's Hot Take Tuesday. You gonna play the video? Good. That's right. It's Hot Take Tuesday here on Texas Football.
Keep going. Sorry.
We are. I know we're working out the technical difficulties. It's Hot Take Tuesday. We are inviting the Dave Campbell's Texas football staff each week to issue a hot take on TexasFootball.com and then come on this show and defend it. Today, the return of Ishmael Johnson. And Ishmael Johnson's hot take is about what he calls the worst rule in football. We talked about it. Here's Ish. It's Hot Take Tuesday here on Texas Football Today. And today's hot taker, it's everybody's favorite member of the Texas Football Today family. We haven't seen you in like decades, Ishmael Johnson. But you can hear it. You can hear it. Go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, it's probably been since the anniversary show, I guess, technically.
So, but I will just say this. Maybe this is a good way to plug this. If you just need your Ishmael Johnson fix, you can listen to Republican Football every week. I mean, you get Ish all the time in on that one. So subscribe on the podcast vendor of your choice. But we're here not to talk about your other podcast ventures, but because it's your turn to fire off the hot take, and you got it up on TexasFootball.com. You call it the worst rule in football. What are you talking about?
I stopped short of calling it the worst rule in sports, even though I have called it that in the past. But basically, it's the touchback rule. When the ball rolls out in the end zone, offense loses possession for some reason, and the defense gets it right then and there, regardless of whether or not they recover it. I think it's the worst rule in football, as the column says. I think it's something that I don't know where it could start as far as like changing that rule. But it has to start somewhere, like whether it's the NFL or college football or NFHS or something. But I honestly feel that has to start somewhere. Primarily because, and I kind of touch on this at the end, but for a sport that prides itself so much on finishing and, playing to the whistle and doing every little bit, this is such a drastic swing for the defense making half of a play. And, when you look at a turnover, it's forcing the turnover and recovering the ball. That is a turnover. The touchback rule basically says, close enough. Here you go. And go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that's rather interesting. And I think if maybe people haven't thought about it that way, but like think about a fumble. Let's just say that you're carrying the ball. You're at the 50-yard line. And you fumble the ball and it goes out of bounds, right? It goes out of bounds. Right. That's not a change of possession. Now, if you were to move that to the 1-yard line and you were to fumble it out of bounds past the pylon, it's suddenly a turnover and the other team gets the ball in the 20. It does seem like a very context-specific rule for a sport that generally has kind of removed those.
Right, like it's literally, it goes from just like, oh, it's down right there to basically an interception. Like, why did that happen? I propose something in a fix to it in the article, an inverted touchback, basically, to where the offense gets the ball first and goal at the 20, and you get 3 or 4 tries to punch it in, and there you go. It punishes both sides because obviously we've seen all seen examples of, receivers dropping the ball just shy of the end zone and maybe getting kicked out or something. Or last year with Trevon Diggs, I think it was knocking the ball out of DK Metcalf, flying in the back of the end zone, right? So DK Metcalf should be punished for that. The ball carrier should be punished for losing possession of the ball, but they shouldn't lose possession because the defense didn't recover anything. And so that's why I think, okay, well, if you lose it at the goal line, okay, then you're pushed back to the 20. There's your penalty, right? There's your punitive damage. Then you, yeah, then the defense also gets spotted 20 yards, and they say basically but they also get punished for not recovering the ball. And so I don't know. It's always bugged me, and it always comes up like it's a rule that pops up like 4 times a year. And like, I
Mhm.
mean, 4 times in like the NFL, college football, and high school. Like, it never comes up, but when it does, you're like, wait, why is this a thing?
Yeah, it is, and it seems particularly like punitive. You know what I mean? Like it's a
Like,
really punitive
arbitrarily.
rule. Yeah, it's a really punitive rule. And it's funny because especially if you go with the NFL, I would say that is arguably like I think the NFL is also home to the most punitive penalty in sports, which is pass interference.
Mm-hmm.
Because like theoretically that could be a 98-yard penalty if
Right.
you wanted it to be. You would need a quarterback with a rocket arm, but that's neither here nor
Right.
there. But then you're talking about this, and you're right. It seems like fumbling at the wrong place on the field is does make it particularly punitive.
Mhm.
So it's an interesting idea, and I also think that I think you're going to have some support on this. I think this is one of those rules that because it only comes up every once in a while,
Mhm.
people don't necessarily think of.
Right.
But I think when you think more and more about the intricacies and how kind of almost out of place the rule is, I do feel like most people will probably agree. Yeah, you do need to change it. You do need to make that so that it is like most other fumbles
Mhm.
or every other fumble, and not make it context specific to where the fumble happened.
Sure. And I think that I've heard some solutions where, some people propose making it just straight up first and goal, right? If it's down anywhere out of bounds and the other 99 yards, it's down there, right? And so why should that theoretically change on the goal line? And I could sort of get that, but I do think there should be some penalty for losing the ball in the goal line, in the end zone. Um the argument that it's not really a tangible one to me, but to me, it's the best argument I've heard just for like how weird the sport is and how like, we've drifted towards obviously making it a more offensive centric sport. The argument that I've heard is that, yeah, but this is a rule that goes for the defense, just keep it. Like, because they've lost so much leverage in terms of like the rule book over the past era. And like, to me,
Yeah.
you can't argue that for football reasons, but like as just like how the game has evolved, I could hear someone out just saying, yeah, why not? Just give it to the just give it to the defense. Everything's
That
pass interference now. All these things are catches that are probably not. Whatever, defense, here's a bone. I could see people.
that
To me, that's the most sound argument, even though it's not a football one.
No, that strikes me as like, well, all these other things are wrong. Let's do this wrong in the other
Right,
direction.
right.
You know
And
what I mean?
it's like that doesn't make sense, but I could get it because nothing, a lot of other things don't make sense.
Okay, that's tough and fair. Yeah, I think I agree with you. I agree with you that this is the worst rule in football. And the thing about it too, that after reading your column, it strikes me as a pretty easy fix. Like this strikes me as like there's nothing really stopping. There's no like real like thing. There's no like tradition in here. There's no like
Mhm.
argument. There's no people who are like really that their ox is going to get gored by changing this rule. And there's no like real uphill climb to change it. It's just like write it into the rule book and then you're done. Like it
Right.
just doesn't it doesn't feel like there's all these other like ripple effects that you have to consider.
Right. It's like, oh, you can't, like the kickoff rule or something where you're like, oh, if you change that, what's going to happen in this scenario? It's like, no, this is a very specific scenario that is like, honestly, if you want to bring up like the top five most potentially catastrophic rules, like you mentioned pass interference, like obviously in the NFL in particular, or in college football, like you can use that strategically, right? If you're getting beat 50 yards, just knock them down. Oh, okay, 15 yards, right? So like pass interference arguably might be number one in terms of like the most momentum swinging, shifting play penalties. This is like two or three to me because the offense is about to score and then they just straight up lose possession. Like the quarterback may as well have thrown a pick in the end zone, and Yeah, I don't know. Like it's again, I mentioned the fact that just because this is a sport that has always prided itself on playing to the whistle and doing everything, and all of a sudden it's just like, yeah, it's half, it's fine, it's here, have the ball. Like I don't, it never made sense to me. And the people that there will be people, we're recording this before the show, but there will be people in the comments who stand by this rule, and I never understand why. I do not see what the point. And it's always from like well, he should, the ball carrier should finish the play, and it's like, yeah, but the defense should too. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, that does it strikes me as like very selective of like who you expect what from in that. So he's Ishmael Johnson. You can read his fine work at texasfootball.com, including him railing against the worst rule in football. Ish,
I'll have more.
appreciate
Thanks
your time.
for this. This is great. I'll have more of these.
He's got more takes lined up, folks. Buckle up.